Welcome. Today
Ben.
we're down
Sunny
under
Sydney.
Sarah
Oh, thank you
today.
for having me.
And with AJ Straight. Sunny Sydney. My name's Paul Rushworth-Brown, the host of Down Under Interviews, History Bards, in association with Meet the Author Indie Book Source. Okay, so there's some very, very, I suppose, jealous authors watching this show. Let me just read some of the awards. Shortlisted for the highly coveted Eric Hoffer Book Award for 2024. Awarded the Bronze Award for General Historical Fiction from the Historical Fiction Company 2023. Awarded the 5-star from Reader's Favourite. Awarded the Gold Book Award from the Literary Titan 2024. Winner of the highly coveted 5-star highly recommended award from the Historical Fiction Company. Gail, I'm jealous. On social media, I can't even mention your name without somebody coming out and saying, "Oh, she's my favourite author." I can't wait to do this interview.
You know, I'm very humbled by the awards and the attention. It's interesting because it started out very slow, but it's sort of starting to build. I mean, the book has been out since June of last year, and On the Wings of the Red-tailed Hawk has been out since June of last year, and it really didn't do much at the beginning, and it was my first novel, and I thought, well, maybe I really don't know what I'm doing. It's been very humbling and really quite gratifying.
Step into the rugged world of Plymouth, 1620, where Sarah, a courageous woman, embarks on an unforgiving journey in the New World. Amidst the treacherous unknown, she faces starvation, death, and the harsh realities of early colonial life. On the Wings of the Red-tailed Hawk masterfully weaves historical authenticity with an inspiring tale of resilience, as Sarah discovers her inner strength to survive against overwhelming odds. This award-winning novel, lauded for its evocative writing and powerful portrayal of women's triumphs in history, is a must-read for lovers of gripping historical fiction. Join Sarah on her harrowing yet empowering journey and witness the indomitable spirit that defines the true pioneers of America.
Of Philippa Gregory and Alison Weir and those historical fiction books that talked about, the kings and queens and the princes and princes of England in particular. And I realized that no one really talked much about these ordinary people. And yet, if you look at what these ordinary people have accomplished, it's actually quite extraordinary. Mm. And then I realized the answer was, first of all, you had to care about Sarah and what happened to her and what happened to her next. But Sarah sort of became an amalgamation, if you will, a fictional character whose experiences I took from various and sundry of my relatives and maybe some of yours. Some of them were stories that I learned about during my research, and some of them were things I knew about my own family. Both my mother and father's families came over on the Mayflower.
Wow, that's quite interesting, then.
Yeah, and so the Mayflower has fascinated me for a long time. But it also occurred to me that most people couldn't name one woman who had been on the Mayflower and survived that first winter. And I think people are surprised a little bit when they start to read the book, that these 5 women are there taking care of all these men and children, and no one else comes for over a year. They're it.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I really wanted to give a voice to those women and what they went through. And Sarah was sort of born out of that. And it's interesting because some of the reviews have mentioned they feel like Sarah, like they were right there with Sarah. And I take that as a huge compliment. But I also recognize that in some ways I am Sarah.
In the volatile province of Britannia, AD 59, Venator, Roman equestrian one, follows Decimus, a seasoned centurion, and Luciana, a fierce Celtic princess, as they navigate a deadly conflict that ignites their mutual attraction. Bound by their passion for horsemanship but divided by loyalty, they must confront a growing unrest led by mysterious druids and power-hungry factions. Amidst the chaos of mounting casualties and political intrigue, Decimus and Luciana grapple with their volatile relationship and the relentless quest for control over Britannia's future.
To both tell realistic stories and not to sugarcoat the difficult stuff. And there's plenty of difficult stuff. And at the same time, engage you enough in the history and in Sarah to want to keep going.
Okay, so what was the hardest scene, without giving too much away, hardest scene for you to write? Okay, obviously Sarah's, she has a very, very strong character.
She is.
So what was the hardest scene for you to write?
There's a place in the story where a child dies, and it's actually a place I've gotten. It's a part of the story I've actually gotten a lot of feedback about. I've had male friends who've read the story, text me and say, "You made me cry," and I think the reason that particular scene was so difficult, not just for me, but I think for readers in some ways too, is this child dies doing what children do, playing. Yeah. That was the first time I really wrote about grief in that profound way. I saw my parents lose their only son when he was only 25. And so in some ways I was really channeling that grief that I saw my parents go through into Sarah and the people around her and how they responded and reacted to the loss of this child. And, you've done genealogy as I have. The rate at which children died in some of these locations and some of these time periods is beyond what most of us can comprehend.
How do you see the role of women in history, and how do you believe Sarah is a role model for other women in history?
I think, unfortunately, historically, women are often just simply overlooked as if they're not there. That old saying, "Behind every great man is a strong woman or a wonderful woman." But the problem is they are behind the men. They're, unless you are Queen Victoria, or someone else whose contribution touches the world in a different way, you often are no one. And I felt like that's a wrong I could maybe set a little right by giving these women their voices back, and that's why the books are written. All my books are written in the first person. This is Sarah telling Sarah's story, and that's important to me because she owns that story. It's hers to tell. It's not someone else's perception or interpretation of what she felt or what she endured or what was important to her. It's her, because history documents them so poorly.
Bards Sing of Love and War is a captivating historical novel set in 11th century Wales, where love, honor, and ambition clash amidst the Norman invasion. As Chief Bard Rodri mentors young Tal, the tale unfolds with political intrigue, familial loyalty, and forbidden romance, centering on Griffith Rhys's quest to reclaim his kingdom and win Gwenllian's heart. Amidst King Henry I's campaigns, and betrayals within King Gruffydd Sinan's court, a web of deception, secret marriages, and daring rescues promises to enchant fans of epic romance and adventure.
Baby, You're Worth It follows the heart-wrenching story of Tabitha, a mother whose joy is shattered by unforeseen tragedy during the birth of her second child. Faced with the devastating consequences of medical errors, Tabitha must navigate life-altering decisions, balancing her job, her mother's deteriorating health, and the needs of her children. Amidst pain and trauma, Tabitha embarks on an inspiring journey of courage, love, and resilience to reclaim her happiness and heal what's broken inside.
Too stilted that people would lose interest and not be able to follow it. So you are constantly walking that tightrope of how to say this in a time frame that makes sense, but without being so confined by those conventions that you can't write in a way that people can relate to and understand.
Can you give us some sort of insight into that journey on the ship over there? Obviously, it was like months on some pretty wild ocean. So
the journey was supposed to take about 4 weeks, and it took close to 9. And they were underprepared for that. They encountered many storms that impacted their ability to move in the right direction. They knew where they were going. They were going to the Jamestown colony, but they got lost, and they landed in an area that had not been inhabited by European settlers. And I think a lot of people don't realize that in many ways this was a fiasco. These people were unprepared to land someplace where there was not already a settlement in place. Their journey had taken twice as long, so their provisions had gotten very depleted. And then they show up to a place where there is nothing.
Yeah.
And surely none of them would have survived if it hadn't been for the Indians' help. Yeah. They should have all perished. And I think most of us don't understand that story. We think, oh, they did what they set out to do. They went where they were supposed to go.
One thing that comes across in the novel is that a lot of those people that were on the ship and did arrive did eventually die.
Oh, yeah. 2/3 of them. It's so glossed over in history as this happy little band of pilgrims. And it was really nothing like that. At the same time, going to this place was not on Sarah's list of things to do. But she loved her husband, she trusted her husband, and so she went, as most of the women did. And then when things suddenly take an unexpected turn, now Sarah is a place she doesn't want to be, in a circumstance she doesn't want to be in. Yeah. And there's nothing she can do about it.
Was there any sort of growth from like when she and her husband embarked on this journey to sort of like towards the end of the story? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sarah really does grow throughout the story. And at the beginning of the story, Sarah is not a strong woman. She's quite weak, in fact. She's unhappy. She's a whiner. She's very much questioning whether God is in fact in control, or whether they are being, battered about by the other forces of the universe. And she doesn't feel strong. She doesn't want to be strong even. And it's only through a series of events that Sarah has to deal with, learns to deal with, in part from her friend Mary and from others around her, that she does in fact become that strong presence herself. And if you pay attention to that evolution, that arc through the story, by the time you get to the last chapters, Sarah's now making decisions that are difficult, and that place her love and care for others above her own safety and well-being, which is not something I think you would have thought Sarah would have done at the beginning. And by the end of the story, Sarah's making decisions that are intended to help and protect those she cares about and her family and others, even at the cost of her own life. ended up becoming The Centenary Chronicles, Tales of American Women. And it is a 3-part series. Book 2 follows Sarah's great-great-granddaughter through the American Revolution. And book 3 follows the great-granddaughter of the woman in book 2 through the Civil War.
Okay.
And so that series is in the can, so to speak. The last book in the series was finished in May. Her last full measure is the last book, and that book is very much based on my own family's experiences in Michigan during the Civil War. So now that series is done, I am working on a book set in ancient Egypt.
Wow, that's quite a change.
I've, in addition to being an Anglophile, I've always been obsessed with everything Egyptian. Cleopatra's sister, Arsinoe, and my first thought was, Cleopatra had a sister? Well, of course she did. She had several siblings, right? It's just not stories that you hear about.
Yeah.
But when I heard this snippet of a story about her younger sister, Arsinoe, and her efforts to overthrow her sister, Cleopatra, and her lover, Julius Caesar, when she was only 14, my first thought was, this is the most interesting story nobody's ever told. I am writing the story of Arsinoe.
Yeah. I mean, add another couple of awards to the list, I suppose.
I don't know. We shall see. We shall see.
So, Gail, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I wish you the very best of luck with it, and obviously with your future projects.